I'm going to call to order the BUHS number 6 meeting for February 6th. And
Apologize
I
for my
will
tardiness.
immediately turn the gavel over to the chair. That's the gavel.
Apologize for my tardiness.
That's all right.
And please stay. So the first part of our meeting tonight is designed to be a budget review session to the public, which doesn't appear there's any public here, but maybe for folks at home, in preparation for our meeting next week on the 14th. So I guess I'll turn it back over to you to start to review that process.
All right, well, this is, those on the board know, the budget that we approved at the recent meeting. And, sorry, Ron. And what I will do is briefly go through some key points. If there's any questions, jump in. This will benefit hopefully some folks watching at home, and we don't have anybody from the public here. But we'll go, and I'm going to use what's called the big book. This is the full book, which I believe you all have a copy of. And I'll refer, if I forget to refer to page number, Ruth, you just nudge me and tell me which page. But, so I want to start with on page 6 of the big book, and that's basically the notice for the annual meeting. And the budget portion of that is the main article, number 8, and we will be requesting the voters' approval for $25,359,197. And you can see on Article 8 on that page that this will result in education spending of $17,349 per equalized pupil, and that is level exactly with spending for the current year. And the equalized pupil is the method that we use to equalize students. Not every student, all students are created equal, but they end up not being quite equal when it gets to the state's measurement for socioeconomic status and what grade they're in and so forth. So per equalized pupil, our spending will be completely level. And I'd like to review by the major units involved in BUHS number 6, but first I would just quickly review the process that we go through, and we start in October, the Finance Committee, and give direction to administrators for the tone of the budget, or the goal, I guess if you will. And by my records, this is the 10th year in a row that we have asked for a level service budget and as close to or level funding as well. And for 10 years, the administrators have diligently worked on this to make sure that happens, and we have always presented a budget. If you look at the trend over the last 10 years, we have been in very good control, I believe. So the administrators, through their department heads, review virtually every line item in every department. We have some reviews with the Finance Committee. Typically, Finance Committee will ask questions or review departments, but not individual line items within the department, because that's what the administrators have already done. But we do, at our finance meetings, review virtually every department for the high school, the BAMS, the Career Center, and what we call district-wide. District-wide being the services that go across all the units, such as nursing, library, plant maintenance, and so forth. So I'd like to just quickly go through the 4 units, including district-wide, and fill you in on what's happening. This is really a budget that is not affected very much at all by personnel moves or reductions or additions and so forth. essentially, we're level personnel with the exception of one position in the high school, and that being a administrative assistant. As you will recall, a year ago now, or yeah, it was a year ago now, we made a reduction in the number of administrators in the high school, going from 2 assistant principals and a dean of students down to 2. And at that time, we also did away with the administrative position that went with it. And it's been realized that there are a whole lot of things that need to get done that have been taking time away from the assistant principal's ability to spend time with the students, which is really what they're supposed to be doing. So we have put back in an administrative position. That's assistant? Oh, administrative assistant, yes. Not another administrative, sorry, Steve, don't panic. So that's the only real personnel change in the whole budget for all 4 units. So let's take a quick look at page 15, which is the district-wide budget, and there's a couple of notable numbers there on page. I want to point to page 16, which about a quarter of the way down the page, item under 2600, operations and maintenance and plant. You can see, if you look at the change in that budget, that's up $224,000, which is a significant portion of the district-wide, except for special education, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so why is that going up? Well, we are in the 11th or 12th year now since this wonderful $50-some million project was completed, and as expected, as you get further and further along into the life cycle of a project and a building, you have to put more money into it to maintain it. We are very conscious about the deferred maintenance situation that led us to have to do such a huge project to start with, and the condition of the school at the time. And we want to be proactive and make sure that we're dealing with the things that need to be done on a routine basis. So there is money in this area for some capital, and that line also includes things like snow plowing and so forth. But if you quickly just skip over to page 24, you can see what the capital plan has in store for us. And this is a plan that gets monitored by the Finance Committee, and the board sees it annually. And we actually look a little further than that. We only put 5 years in the book here, but we actually look a little further than that. And if you look at FY18, that's the numbers that are appearing under this district-wide budget. We are at the point where we will start to need to do some work to the HVAC system. We have money in there for athletic field maintenance. We are at the point where we need to do something with Natowich Field, seeding, recrowning, whatever. We're not exactly sure how far we'll go with that, but we need to do something with that. There's also, you can see at the bottom, $100,000 grandstand equipment storage. We are at the point with the Tenney Field and the baseball stands that we are in unsafe condition, and we have to do something about that. And that is under, right now we're looking at the options, and we will meet about that with finance. But we put some money in there because we need to definitely do something, and it's gonna be a few bucks, that's for sure. I skipped the top couple of numbers, which include building safety infrastructure. That we've done a little bit of every year as the world changes. There's more and more requirements for safety glass and controlling exit and entrance, and we put some in there. We have, as I said, a little bit for the HVAC system. And so the total is $350,000, which you can see is up about a little over 100 from the prior 2 years. But just so you know, that number will probably, hopefully not increase too much, but as the years go by, and particularly as we get into bigger work with the HVAC system, there's going to be some money necessary to be placed in that. So that's has an impact on the district-wide budget. That's the key things there. You can also see on page 16, part of the change in special education is now the paras will also go over to supervisory union. They were in the individual budgets before. You can see zeros in a couple of spots there on page 16. So overall, again, prior to the special education change, which I think maybe, would you want to just summarize that briefly, because it overarches particularly the district budget here? Why it looks from page 17 that we're down 20% on our district-wide budget, but
Sure.
not comparing apples to.
Yes. So the most significant change this year in the budget, and the reason why, as Woody had indicated, overall the budget is down about 9%, is because we are complying with a new act, Act 148, with a state law for fiscal year 18, where both the special ed expenditures and the revenues are at the supervisory union level. So on page 17, when we look at the total district-wide, down 2.7 million. The lion's share of that is back on line 16 under special ed. It's about 2/3 the way down the page on page 16. It's a part of the subtotal of district-wide. And you see the largest number in the difference column, the change column. It's down $3,057,000. So this does not mean that we're losing services. It simply means that the SU it will continue to operate programs about a little more than $4 million worth of services that were primarily staff, but also include outside services. The SU is going to receive the state aid that formerly went to BUHS, and then assess the net amount. And that net amount is what you see on page 16, 1.7 million there, the 1.790. The total million, if you look at the prior column, fiscal year 17, which is the current year, you see the SU assessment under this contracted professional services, that $4,035,000. So we're going to continue to staff and provide about that level of resources to BUHS. But what's going to happen is the SU is going to reduce the amount to assess by the revenue that's also coming out of this budget. We haven't talked about the revenues yet, but that is back on page 13, and you would see, if you just look at the difference column again and look for the biggest numbers, you'll see negative $372,000 and then negative $2,237,000. You see, those are special ed revenues that are going to the SU. So the SU is still going to spend about the $4 million, but the SU is going to get that revenue, that 2.7 or so, 2.6, 2.7 in revenue, and then going to send the bill back to the BUHS for just the net amount that's not funded. Because remember, the supervisory union does not set tax rates. It doesn't receive tax money. The districts do. So that's where you've got about a little more than half of the funding coming from the state, and the balance coming from the district. So That's what accounts for the substantial drop there on page 17, from 13.7 million district-wide current to this 10,959,000.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, right below that number, we start with the senior high, and I mentioned the one personnel change there. Class sizes and total enrollment is expected to be up a little bit in the high school, and class size will be up. Discretionary spending has been held in check, reviewed carefully, somewhere in the 1% range. There really is not a whole lot notable there. This is on page 17 where that starts. You can see the tuition number there is a pretty big number. That will be down. And in total, moving to page 18, at the bottom of the high school lines there, it's less than 1% increase in expenditures for the year, 0.5% of $41,000 up. So a few more students, but great expense control. As soon as you drop down from that line, we get to BAMS. Basically, no staff changes there. I think, Keith, there was a couple of maybe slight reallocations of duties, or is that all from last year's?
Right, it's all last year.
Okay. So there are, the BAMS budget is up a little bit, and basically you can track it to the salaries and benefits lines that we have negotiated salaries that will automatically go into play, and that accounts for basically the increase in BAMS, which is going to be 3.7%. BAMS census might be down a little bit. We've had a blip of 8th graders that'll, I believe, will go into 9th grade as a number where it's going to bump up the high school a little bit. But that was a number that was an upward blip from the prior year, and we didn't add any services or expenses basically to handle that when they arrived at BAMS. So that's not going to create much of any change in the staffing or services. Same programs both at BAMS and the high school. So that's page 20 where you see BAM's bottom line increase of 3.7%. Then moving to the vocational center, no programs added or dropped. There's been somewhat of a realignment of administrative duties, but no major staff changes. And the bottom line for the Career Center is basically flat, and that you can see over on page 21. And in the individual line items, there's not a huge amount of, other than as you see some salary and benefits changes. So a 0.3% increase in expense for Career Center. So then the line below that is the big number, line 21, and that ties back into the number that I gave you for the article warning, $25,359,197, and you can see to the far right that shows as a 9.4% decrease, but as Frank just explained, you need to factor out the special ed, and I believe if you did that, Frank, we'd be somewhere in the 2%.
That's right.
Total increase. And, 80+% of our total appropriation is for salaries and benefits, and so that is right about at the same level that you would expect if none of the discretionary expenses were really changed. So the two things that affect the budget upward are the increase in capital expenses primarily. That's the one thing that's the most of the factor, and program salaries and benefits. We talked a little bit about the capital plan. Do you want to give us a little go-through on the revenue side of things? Now, reminding that the board doesn't vote on the revenues, the board votes on the appropriations. We need to understand the revenues, and we have spent quite a bit of time in Finance Committee particularly talking about that, but maybe Frank could give us a quick go-through
Sure.
on revenue.
Okay, so the revenue detail is on page 12 and 13. And then page 14 is the school funding formula that calculates the tax rate. And, you know, you might think a common sense thing would be that the revenues and the tax rate calculation are pretty connected, but they are actually not very connected. So I'll help explain that. So the revenue, of course, starts with a spending plan, the staffing plan, the spending plan, and of course most of that is driven on our enrollment and our goals, our action plan. From the spending plan of 25 million, you see on page 13, we put both the revenue and expenses on the same page just to make sure we have a balanced budget. So page 13 at the very bottom, you see this total revenue figure, 25,178,000, and then we have use of fund balance, 180,000, and that's what matches the 25,359,000 in expenses. That's where, you know, we've made sure that we have a plan to fund the operations. And while we're on that concept, when we look at the next page, page 14, there is no link to what the tax rate raises and any one of our revenue numbers. Okay, and that's not the way, you know, it used to be. It used to be you set a tax rate that would raise $1 on the grand list that was specifically to fund a municipal budget. That is the way the select boards still operate, but schools don't operate that way any longer. They haven't for 20 years now. So to make that understandable, what we do is we take the 25 million in spending and we identify revenues that that are derived from the activities that you see in this relatively long list here. A couple of the larger numbers are right off the bat tuition revenue. This is from our 80 or so students from surrounding towns that don't live in our member town region. So towns like Marlborough, Dover, you see that on page 12, 1.198 million in revenues. You see lots of other types of revenues. Another relatively large number, 121,000, is the sub-grant from the supervisory union. That's a Title I. That's kind of been in the news lately regarding what the federal government is considering in terms of its appointment for the U.S. Agency of Education. So that's a pass-through from the federal government to the state to the UHS. At the very top of page 13 is the largest number on the page from a revenue point of view. I'll come back to that number in just a minute. But as we look at these other revenue sources, you know, some of the larger numbers, transportation aid, so the state looks at our spending and they send us a check for about 42% of what we spend on transportation. There's this high school completion grant that matches expenditures associated with educating adult learners who come back for their high school diploma. Then there's a variety of revenues to help fund the Career Center. You see these are the balance of this report on page 13 is mostly oriented toward funding the Career Center. The largest one there, the state support grant for 1.2 million, and so on. So you see, those are all specific revenue sources. They are associated with either an agency that we apply to receive money from, or, you know, in the case of a tuition town, it's because we offer a great educational opportunity, and we develop a tuition rate based on, again, the spending and the number of kids. When we're all done figuring out our revenue sources, that's how we come back to that biggest number on the page there, that 19,165,000. It's as simple as that. It's a cash flow calculation. It's 25 million in spending minus all of these other sources of revenue leaves a gap that the district needs to operate. So that's how that 19 million comes together. Then when we go to the taxes, you won't find that 19 million anywhere on that page. The way the taxes work is it's simply how much are we spending? What are those other sources of revenues that we don't need to ask the state education fund for? And then, so what's called net spending, or they call it line 11 on page 14, education spending. It's 25 million minus the tuition revenue and that other revenue I was just telling you about, which adds up there on page 14. You can see that on number 9, line 9, 5.2 million. That's all that other stuff. That's that tuition revenue and transportation revenue and all those little grants. So it's 25 million minus the 5 million leaves 20 million they call education spending, and now we divide that by our equalized students that Woody has given us a little background on, of 1,161. That's on line 12, and we get a cost per student of 17,349. That's in the warning. And that figure is divided by a statistic that the state announces every year, about $10,000. And so when you look at when you look at 17,349, if you just move your decimal around there, you see your tax rate in that number. You see the tax rate in the cost per student number. The tax rate is 1.722, so it's very similar to the 17349. Okay, and we can talk about the nuances of that, but the important point here is that, see, $1.72 doesn't go to some tax table and raise that 19 million. The $1.72 is sent to each of the districts in the next section there, section 26, in proportion to the amount of students each town has pre-K through 12. So the town of Brattleboro has 50%. You see in the very small print on the far right, on line 26. Okay, that line 26 on the very far right. There's a 87 cents is the tax rate that goes to the town of Brattleboro, and to the right of that is a statistic, 50.54%. So that's because they have pre-K through 6. They're about, when you look at a pre-K through 12, half their kids are at the pre-K through 6 level, and the other half, 50.54%, is here. So the calculation is 50% of our $1.72 is 87 cents. That's how those numbers are computed. So for the BUHS budget, the tax rate, it derives a figure of 87 cents, and that gets combined with the same calculation that the Brattleboro Town School District does. They do the same thing. They take their spending, they take their revenue, they get their ed spending divided by their equalized students, and they get a tax rate. And then that tax rate is multiplied by the balance of 50.54%, which would be 49.46. And that's the way the taxes work. And when you go to the grand list, the Brattleboro Select Board's education grand list, that tax rate raises about half of what we spend, and that money goes to the education fund, and there is no relationship between how much money is raised and how much we spend, or that $19 million. There was a question at the Brattleboro Town representative town meeting by a member of the public who basically wanted to know what that relationship was, because the question was in the context of the old way of doing business. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks, because the town still uses, take a tax rate, apply it to your grand list, and then bring that revenue into your budget as the funding source. They don't understand that is not the way schools are funded, and consequently, we pay a lot of attention to the cost per student statistic, and that's how we get back to use of fund balance. Maybe that's the last thing I'll add here is, as Woody has pointed out, taxes are scheduled to be down a little bit. Our current tax rate is $1.788, and we're scheduled to go to $1.722. So if you put that on a $100,000 house, we're going from what, $1,788 down to $1,722. Okay, our tax rate is estimated to be down 3%, 3.7%. And that is largely because of the cost per student is flat, as Woody has said, page 14, line 13. Cost per student stayed the same, $17,349. In part, it stayed the same because spending was down, enrollment was up, and we used $180,000 to make it the same. If we eliminated that $180,000, that would push up the tax rate about 0.5%. So, as the Finance Committee and the administration, and then the board, we go through the development of the budget. This is part of level service and level cost. It's all part. They're all interconnected, all related variables.
Brian?
Yep.
What exactly is the 10,076 number? Is that the average cost per student?
No, that's a
state,
good
or?
question. Mr. Reitman had that same question. Yes, that is a number that is called the Base Education Spending Index. It's something that came in to Act 60 in 1996, and most school board members, most folks in our position would like that to be a meaningful number. But the answer that we've gotten is that it's part of several indices that the legislature uses, the Appropriations Committee uses, to essentially manipulate the school funding formula so that it produces the 1.4 billion, 1.5 billion statewide at the education fund level to fund education for the year, which they don't know the actual results until town meeting and all the votes are cast. But it's the same number, or the same question is, what is the meaning of the dollar yield? So it has the same significance in terms of the funding calculation. Let's see if I can find that little thing. Line 26. This is the Agency of Ed's format. They're asking us not to change it because they want every school board, every citizen to see the same information. You see that statistic below the tax rate in the fiscal year 18 it's $1, fiscal year 17 it's $1, fiscal year 16 it's 98 cents, and fiscal year 15 it's 94 cents. So that statistics is just as meaningful as the question you asked, where did that come from? And the answer, it's just part of a formula that they use when they look at what they think the school boards are going to present to the public and what the public is going to approve. They look at the statewide grand list changes, because these numbers are all applied to, in the aggregate, all the grand lists in the state. All the money goes to Montpelier Education Fund, and then the money comes back to the districts based on that cash flow number we were talking about. Our number is 19 million. That's what we need to balance our budget. Our tax rate times our grand list it won't raise anywhere near 19 million. And we need money from Dover and Killington and, you know, the ski towns that are in the opposite place. So the long answer is, the short answer is we'll have to get our architects of the funding formula to explain the 10,076, and you see that number has changed every year.
And I guess actually the short answer to the question I was really asking wasn't where does that number come from, but what's the relevance of that number?
I assume that it's that 17,349, our per pupil figure, is 172.186% of that number.
That's right.
And the reason we see a decrease in our taxes is because we stayed the same, but that number increased on the state level.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, along with a few other numbers that changed. Another, just not so much revenue, but absolutely related to this, and probably more relevant for most people, is the income sensitivity figures. They're the next line down, the final batch of statistics, line 27. And so this is the cap on income, and this would be family household income as defined by the law, that a family would be subject to for school property tax. So what that means is if your family income on a house and 2-acre tax return is $50,000, for example, in fiscal year 17, current year, the most you would pay, regardless of your property tax, is 3.19% of your income. You see that's at line 27. 3.19. So on a $50,000 income, that's about $1,500, right? 3% of 50,000, 1,500. But if you lived in a $300,000 house, if your neighbor's making $150,000, that neighbor's going to pay 300,000 times $1.78, which is somewhere around 3,500. You're going to pay, or actually it's more than that. It's 3 times $1,788, so that's close to over $4,000. You see, so that's the income sensitivity provision of the school funding law, and that's a very significant impact on probably 70% of our residents.
I think it phases out at 141,000.
Yeah, and it's a graduated thing. So I used 50,000 because you're getting the full benefit, but as you get toward 100, it's substantially diminished and totally gone at the higher level.
I think it also has a negative effect in the fact that people's property tax are capped at a certain rate, so it kind of takes them out of the mix as far as school budgets go. They don't really care how much we spend because their property tax isn't going to go up unless their income goes up.
It's a concern.
Yeah.
Yep. So the projected number is 2.92%. So that also is down this 3.7%, and that number is also calculated based on the amount we spend. So per student. So the more we spend per student, the higher the cap is. You go toward 4%, And the lower you spend per student, your cap goes down toward 2%. The lowest it can be is 2%. They start the index at 2%, and it's a similar calculation. It's our spending of 17,349, and then there's a couple of boxes at the very top of the page. Those are those indices. The one for income sensitivity is at 11,875. That's the denominator. So it's 17,349 divided by that 11,875 is the ratio that they inflate the 2% on.
So I guess, Mike, if that information were properly understood, which I don't think it is, that would answer your concern, because if you lower cost per student, you save more. So that is built in there, but I don't think anybody realizes that.
It's not really well understood, yeah. And you know, related to the whole Act 46 discussion that we've had, some folks are under the misperception that you know, a lower cost in a merged system won't affect the income sensitized income earners, and that's not the case. We just explained the way it works. So if a merged system is going to provide a lower cost and a lower cost per student, then folks are going to pay less as a percentage of income if they qualify.
Are there other questions from the board first? And okay. All right. Thank you. If you could just identify yourself so we all know who you are.
Sorry, I didn't introduce you.
It's because I was late, Woody. Franz Reichsman from the Representative Town Meeting Finance Committee. Well, I have to say there's a whole lot in here that I find challenging in terms of understanding on the revenue side in particular. Let me ask about the 1.722 and what's immediately below there. Just from a purely Brattleboro-centric perspective, it looks like, well, the prorated homestead union tax rate is actually going up from 2017 to 2018. It goes from 0.835 to 0.87.
Right, it does, but yeah, if you look at the whole context, then the combined rate you will see is also going down when we combine both of the rates.
So for the town school district, you mean?
That's right. You know, this is part of the challenge of Act, or the current structure. The boards don't get together and look at a combined K-12 tax rate and plan, you know, accordingly. And to some extent, it makes sense when you're totally autonomous and your employment is completely autonomous. Even if you knew what your combined rate was as a collective body, there's not a lot you can do about it. And the other issue is you're both subject to your operating grade level change in enrollment, and you can't undo that. But of course, in the end, when the whole process is done, the two tax rates do come together. There's a common level appraisal statistic that's applied to that, the combined tax rate, and that's what would show up in the mailbox, you know, on a tax rate, and that the combined rates are down.
So the combined rate going down, that's a function of the 1.722 coming down from the 1.788,
Yeah.
and that's apportioned based on the proportion of kids in the K through 6 and the 7 through 12, so that the total between the two town and high school district has to come down if the 1.722 is down. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not necessarily will, because the local district could, the local elementary district. You know, this is the union district. The local elementary district could add a bond proposal, could spike spending and cost per student up, you know, so much that it overwhelms the lower rate. at the Union, but that's not happening in Brattleboro Town. I'm just looking up the Brattleboro Town figures here, so I can tell you, as I recall, it's like about 0.4% down is what I recall the Brattleboro Town rate is. So, and this same schedule that you're seeing here is in the Brattleboro Town annual report as well.
So the 1.722 does appear in the town school, that same number appears in both the high school and the town school budget.
Yeah, yeah. So the town school is going to have a $14 million spending figure. It's going to be divided by 788 kids. It's going to have a cost per student, that's all its own. And then they're going to do the same weighted average calculation. What proportion of the kids, which we know has to be the remainder of 1 minus this 50%, 50.54. It's the same calculation. What is the weighted average of their enrollment? Add those two tax rates up, apply your common level of appraisal to it, and you've got your rate that the folks are going to see on their tax bill for the school property tax. And I did finally get my other school up here. So their spending is $16,960. Their school tax rate is $1.68. Their 49.46 of that statistic is 83 cents. So they take their 83 cents plus this 87 cents, and then the common level of appraisal has gone to 105%. So you take that figure, combined figure, divide it by 105%, and the tax rate is estimated to go from $1.622 down to $1.615, just down a little bit, 0.4%. Each town, each member town of Brattleboro Union High School does the same weighted average calculation to get to an actual tax rate. And all of that goes away if we merged as a single district. We haven't talked about the allocation methodology of the supervisory union, but that's a pretty extensive process to look at all of the different autonomous entities and then share those expenses according to whatever methodology the board approves. So that's a whole nother.
A little bit in that direction. I hadn't even thought about this before. If under Act 46, if the lower level grades merge together, would there only be one school board for both the elementary school and the high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
One employer. Coordinated system.
Yeah. Are there other questions?
I do have other ones, yeah. I don't want to.
Okay.
In this form of this is what I've been working with in terms of understanding the budget. I didn't have the all put together one. There's an item in the capital maintenance plan outlook where it says anticipated use of funds in FY17 of $90,000. And it takes the fund balance from $658,712 down to $568,712. And then that doesn't appear in this version. And I don't know where the $90,000 either went or came from.
Okay.
Page 24 in the book, is that, you're working off the other.
In the book?
Yeah, 24 is for the capital plan. Yeah.
Yes. There it is.
Good.
So, okay. I don't know what I was thinking.
Okay.
Yep. Another question is that there's still 1.7 some million dollars in the budget for special education. And I don't know how it's decided what the state pays for in the special education budget and what is still to be paid for through local taxes.
Russ can tell you all about that, but he probably would like me to.
You're on a roll.
Okay. So that's what I was alluding to earlier around the supervisory union. So all public schools are subject to generally 3 funding reimbursement formulas for special education. There's a block grant allocation that's based on the number of teachers that are employed. If we look at our revenue budget, you'd see the legacy of that that is now going to the supervisory union in an equivalent amount. So back on the, what was that, page 12, I think, 13, is our revenues. So when we look at page 13 and those big numbers I was saying that are negative because they're not coming to the district, 372,000, you see that's the block grant. Okay, that's going to the SU. So that's based on a formula that the state says across the state, all schools will receive a block grant, and it's based on a census. The next group, the largest of the groups, is this intensive reimbursement. That I'll explain in just a minute, and then there's this extraordinary reimbursement, that 350,000, also on page 13. That one is for every student where we incur costs greater than 50,000. The state funds 90% of those expenses in terms of a reimbursement. So that 350 in the current year is what the projection was for a student that may cost 150,000 for their services. Well, the district will pay the whole 150, but will get reimbursed 90% of 100,000 in that example. And then that leaves this intensive aid. So that is, it says, okay, let's look at all your spending in terms of special ed eligible cost, and that's a very significant criteria that the administration has to abide by. Special ed eligible costs are defined by the state board rules, and it's a very specific criteria. It's extensive criteria. They say, okay, well, what have you already gotten reimbursed for? So they take that away from your spending, so you don't get reimbursed twice for the same thing. And then there's a figure that's left over, and that figure is multiplied by a statistic. Usually it's about 54–55%, and the state sends the district's funding for that amount. So overall, the average reimbursement it's around 60% of every dollar in special ed, based on those different formulas, is reimbursed.
But the special ed spending is decided by the board.
Absolutely.
What to spend on that. How much of that, is there a mandatory component? I mean, services that must be provided that, you have to authorize it, but you can't really change it?
Well, there's something called a individual education plan, and that's developed by a team of educators. Any principal can jump right in, Ron, if you want to take that over. But the core of that is that a team, often headed by a principal, is assembled. These would be folks that are qualified to make judgments about learning proficiency, and then learning handicaps. And that team defines the assessment of the child, defines a plan to address the disability, and assigns services. So that's the core of this $4 million in services, and those services might be in the form of a case manager or a learning specialist addressing that particular learning disability, or it might be we don't have the services in our facility that are adequate, and we know here's a facility that specializes in a particular disability, and they address that, and that's a tuition expense. Those tend to be a higher cost, of course, because of the specialization than the norm. So that's what we refer to as an out-of-district placement, and that's part of the budget plan. So the staff resources, tuition resources, and so on are developed. That is reviewed by the finance committee and ultimately the board.
So the special education budget comes together as you just described it. There's a dollar figure there. The state says, okay, we'll cover this much,
Yeah.
roughly 60%, let's say, and then that's where the remainder shows up as the 1.79
That's right.
million that's in the general fund.
That's
Okay.
exactly right. Overall, for the supervisory union, total spending is coming down. The proposed budget's a little bit less in fiscal year 18 than it is in fiscal year 17. And BUHS's share is similar to, in that proportionally costs have been coming down, and it's a reflection of the ability at the SU level to have a single employer and then coordinate services to the districts. Can do that much better than individual employers trying to adjust to small class size changes and not being able to adjust employment to meet those changes.
Okay, thank you. Would you talk about tuition payments in the expenditure side? I get it on the revenue side. I don't know who we pay tuition to.
Career Center. That's.
I knew that. So why did I ask this question? I can't remember.
Well, there are two types of tuition payments. There is the special ed tuition payment. You wouldn't see a line item in here for tuition because that's in the central office budget and it's part of the 1.7 million. But you do see tuition for, we do have an occasion where we might have a student where we don't meet a regular ed need here. So that's not common, but it's possible. But the other significant tuition payment that is in this budget it's an odd convention in the state's design of funding career centers, but BUHS District Number 6 includes Wyndham Regional Career Center. So that 25 million includes our career center. But the state has a convention where it requires BUHS to pay itself, which I don't understand the rationale of that. I hope it gets changed, but you may have picked up on that. So on page 17, maybe Woody may have covered this already, but on page 17 you see we've talked about a district-wide budget, a senior high budget, a middle school budget, and a career center budget.
Right.
Well, on 17 we're in the senior high budget. The state requires us to book an expense of 1.9 million, and we would see that as revenue back on our revenue page. So, from our point of view, it overstates our true budget. That 25 million is really only 23 million because, 1.9 million is paying ourselves. That's a convention that the state uses for whatever reason to fund the career centers across the state. They don't distinguish the fact that we're the host, and we do get tuition revenue. You would expect we would get tuition revenue from Townsend, from Bellows Falls, but the way they fund career centers is that we got to cut a check as well. and when you look at page 13, that's the revenue portion. We've got 1.9 million in expenses. On the revenue side, there are two pieces to this. Page 13, there's a $937,000 figure. You see that? That's us paying ourselves. It says tuition BUHS2 Wyndham. It says WRCC Wyndham Regional Career Center. You see that?
Yep.
Okay, and then there's this state grant. You see the state support grant, VOC, FTE. You see that a few lines down, 1,205,000. That's the other piece. If you add those two numbers up, you get the 1,918,000. So that, I think, probably addresses your question. It's, you know, a good question. I have the same question myself. I don't think we want to get into page 22, but that's the whole funding mechanism for the Career Center. It's a way to set tuition rates.
Frank, could you elaborate for Mr. Reichman on that convention of us paying ourselves ends up costing us more money? Doesn't it cost us like 2% or something on the tax rate?
Yeah, it does increase our total cost per student. The state doesn't allow us to use that revenue, that $937,000. This is probably why they do it this way. They've got to fund the Career Center somehow, and this is the way they do it. But they don't allow us to use that $937,000 as part of the revenue that reduces our cost per student. So this is all connected, but on page 14, now that you've heard how the funding formula works, you'll understand page 14, line 10, that 5,212 on the far right side. That number reduces our tax rate. Every 100,000 that goes in there as a revenue source lowers line 11, which is the base ed spending, right? It lowers that, and then that lowers our cost per student. Well, they don't allow us to count that 937,000 in the 5.2 million. If we could do that, we would lower our tax rate a lot, but then the Career Center wouldn't get funded. So that, you know, they'd have to find another way to fund it. And most high schools complain woefully around this because it's a disincentive to engage kids in a Career Center. It's a financial disincentive. The kids generally don't know that, and parents don't know that, and so theoretically it doesn't matter. But anyways.
And Woody, you had something else?
This is, gets pretty complicated, especially the night after a Super Bowl. But I just wanted to tie page 24 and 12 together in terms of our funds. We didn't, I mentioned that we're not going to take money out of the capital fund, but we were going to reduce the general fund. If you go back to page 12, the top half shows the general fund on the left and the impact of down towards the bottom of the $700,000 that we plan to use this year, and the $180 that in this coming budget that's been approved. And that leaves us with a general fund balance of $2.5 million, which is still reasonable. We hope we don't continue to bring it down, but we still have a reasonable amount of reserve there. But that leads me to a question, Frank. On page 24 at the bottom, we show the anticipated use of $90,000 for the capital reserve of 17. Was that what we had in this year's budget? And that just doesn't happen to show on page 12?
Yeah, let's see.
Page 12 looks like it stops at...
Yeah, I didn't throw the projector, but you can see if you did bring the 90 over to that page as well, it would be, you know, it's the same.
Bring it down to 5.
It's the same number.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to tie those two together.
Yeah, and one reason why I didn't, you know, we published this a year ago as the 90 based on our plan, but we know that, you know, this is an area where we have been able to not use the
Not
reserve as a
utilize,
result
yeah.
of so it's just a way of keeping it flexible, I guess.
Okay,
Okay, good.
thank you for your
Thank you, everybody.
patience.
Any, so, if everyone's good budget-wise, question? Yes.
Another thing. So now there's no actual separate account for the capital funds, is that true? I mean,
There is, yeah.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, the Brattleboro Union has a separate fund. Yeah,
Okay.
You can see that in the audit report as well. You know, as you look, the audit report is attached to this document.
yes, yeah.
And you know, you'll see the cash account and so on, if you want to go into that.
So the total fund balance, though, is something over 3.1 million if you add together the general fund and the capital fund. Are you trying to shoot for a 10% of the total budget in both of those, or just 10% in the general fund budget as a reserve balance, and then some other number in the capital fund? Or how do you approach that?
The latter, yeah, in that we do see the, you know, $25 million in the general fund projected budget, fund balance that Woody's just noted is 10%. You know, the $2,584,000 that is projected through the end of fiscal year 18. The capital fund, we feel the current balance is way underfunded relative to the roofing project. You know, this is 300,000 square feet of roofing, hundreds of thousands of dollars for expenses there. There's the mechanical systems. There's I forget how many of the unit ventilators, the large unit ventilator systems they are only designed to run about 15 to 20 years, and that's what we're doing in terms of reserves to fund those replacements. Some of those systems are $800,000 in cost to replace. So you know, we've got plenty of time to get where we need to be. So it's not like we're behind, but we need to start making those commitments, and so we can define the larger cost. We know the total was $57 million to build this place, and eventually all of those assets are going to fall apart. We're not going to reserve $57 million, but I'm sure we need to be heading toward a number of somewhere around 2 or 3 million to keep a flat tax rate.
So you had made reference in an email you sent me to some budgetary concerns in the capital budget starting in FY21. So that's really what you're
Yeah.
referring to.
Yeah,
Are there projected numbers going out farther than FY20 at this point?
I don't have them right in front of me, but I know Robert Clark, our Director of Maintenance, is much more familiar than we are.
We have looked at as many as 8 years out a couple of different times. And of course, the further out you go, the more subject to change they are. But we started starting to put money into capital about 4 or 5 years ago. When the facility was brand new, there was no real new fund set up. But about 4 or 5 years ago, we said we better start doing that with the so-called roof and boiler fund. So we put some in, and then there's been years where we haven't put some in. But we've also generally been able to avoid taking too much out by the same as we're doing with this $350,000 this year, utilizing it out of our general operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. So why don't we go ahead and move on to the general part of the meeting? If we're all,
Ricky?
everybody's, yeah,
Can we take a few minute break?
sure. Let's take 5 for human need, and we're back at 1:15 from our break. So we're back from our break. BOHS number 6, meeting of February 6th continued. And let's go into clerk's report, and we need a motion for approval of the minutes from January 2nd. I'm assuming everybody got those electronically. Is there a motion?
I move acceptance of the minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additions, deletions, corrections to those minutes? Lisa? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions?
Abstain.
That's not good.
Put to abstain.
Abstain.
Okay.
Not
Great.
opposed, abstain.
Abstaining. Okay. Excellent. All right. So we've approved the minutes. Does the board, do board members have any communications tonight? I'm seeing you. All right. We'll move on. So is there a motion to go into consent agenda?
I move we go into consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Seconded. All right. So we're in consent agenda, and let's start with finance, building, and transportation.
All right, the Finance Committee met on January 17th, and we approved the warrants numbers 1096, 1097, 1098, 1099, 1100, 1101, and 1102, a total of $309,435.09. Contrary to what is in your agenda for tonight, we have not yet voted on warrant numbers 1105 through 1110. We will be voting on those, I presume, this Thursday. We did vote payrolls, the payrolls of December 9th, the amount of $426,745.75, and payrolls of December 23rd in the amount of $435,437.70. Anything else?
We did. We talked very briefly about the proposed sale of the Whetstone Village property. That's still a work in progress. And we reviewed the 2016 audit report, which I believe there are copies of here tonight if anybody would like one. I thought I saw Frank with several of them when he came in.
I think you took them with it.
Oh, he took them? Okay. Well,
Would
they are
contact Frank at the
available in
office if you want.
central office, right? That's about it.
Okay. Excellent. All right. WSCSU finance.
We met on January 19th, approved warrants and payrolls. We are meeting again on the 15th, because this board's meeting on the 14th, and so just to keep it rolling, we're meeting on the 15th. And there's actually going to be an SU meeting on the 15th as well. When is it? Where is it going to be?
Green Street.
Is it Green Street? No, is the WSCSU meeting
Agreed.
on the 15th? Okay.
So we'll have the finance committee at 6 and the SU meeting at 6:30. And can I ask who the reps to the SU board are? Okay, so hopefully you three are available.
Okay. Okay.
I expect to be there,
Great.
weather permitting.
Of course.
Yes. All right. Excellent. Planning and policy.
Planning and policy has not met. Neither has teacher curriculum committee.
Okay. BAMS committee has not been met, I believe.
Has not met.
WRCC.
That's not met.
Okay. WSCSU Act 46 Study Committee. We have met a couple of times.
Once, one meeting was canceled.
That's right, one meeting was
There
canceled.
was another meeting that I was unable to attend due to my work schedule.
Yeah.
Were you at that one?
I was at that one in Guilford. Yep. That was the 25th or something like that in January in Guilford. And we talked about a lot about some specific things related to the agreements and what's happening. And really everything at this point is sort of tabled until after the revote in Dummerston on the 21st, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. There's a revote of whether or not to allow Vernon out of the WSCSU, of the BUHS number 6, to let them out of that. And if that depending on that, the results of that vote will depend on how Act 46 continues to move forward. It'll move forward in some way, but how it moves forward will depend on the results of that vote.
When's the revote again?
The revote is February 21st,
Oh.
and it's just for Dummerston. Then enough, whatever the percentages of voters that they needed to get to sign the petition to have a special revote to let them out again.
We should say that there's an information meeting that the study committee should be attending on Monday, the 13th in Dummerston at 6:30.
So that will be coming up. Also with Act 46 as well, a number of people, including myself, were part of a video that was made at BCTV just as a public information in relation to Act 46. So different people from the different boards were asked to do different pieces of that, and they're putting together that video. I don't know if you've seen anything yet. I haven't either. I'm assuming it's not quite done yet, but they were editing pieces together. As 4 or 5 of us that recorded different pieces of that just around general for when we do the merger vote later this spring. So how that looks. So that's it from Act 46, really. And then the next, other than the information session, I don't know when our next meeting is scheduled.
Yeah, it's like March 2nd. It's a Thursday.
Yeah.
6 p.m. and I'm assuming it's in Putney.
So that'll be the next meeting after the revote on the 21st. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? None. Okay. So let's move on to administrative reports. Let's start down at the far end of the table with Mr. Parrish.
Sure. Hello, everybody. A couple of things. Our counseling department is currently working in conjunction with their counterparts in Bellows Falls, Twin Valley, and Leland and Gray, and they're organizing a career summit for sophomores. And that career summit is actually going to be held downtown, centered at the Latches, but really going all over. And it's scheduled for April 26, 2017. And a whole group of workshops at various places downtown for students to attend and for students to kind of get an idea of what business in Brattleboro looks like and what are some opportunities. And I'll continue to share more as that develops. And pretty proud of our counselors for kind of spearheading that with their counterparts from other schools. On February 16th, 17th, and 18th, I encourage everybody to come and witness Spamalot. It is sure to be interesting at the very least. I've seen a couple of rehearsals, and you will not be disappointed, or you will be disappointed. No, it's going to be great, and they're doing a great job getting ready. And it's exciting to see the work of Bob Kramsky, Tony Speranza, Mitch Davis, Steve Rice, Patty Meyer. They're doing a great job with the cast. Along those same lines, Elijah Taylor and junior Jackson Levengood have been accepted into the New England Music Festival. They'll be traveling to Norwalk, Connecticut for 3 days of rehearsal and then a larger concert with the New England High School Band. So congratulations to them. We recently got the 2016 Scholastic Award winners, and these cover areas from the arts, poetry, essay writing, and we had 22 winners, and BUHS scored a total of 57 awards. And it's a pretty impressive list of awards, and it's a pretty impressive list of winners. So I'd like to just pass this around and let you kind of take a look at the sheer variety of work that our kids do and their expertise. You know, everything from photography to poems about being a pre-cooked dinner. It's kind of a cool list, so take some time and enjoy that. Last week we had we welcomed the parents of the class of 2021, and we had an 8th grade parent night. Parents from all over joined us. We tried something new this year. Rather than having, most of you that were parents remember, rather than having rather than have department heads conduct tours, we had assistant principals and myself conduct tours, and we had the department heads available in the library to just talk about 9th grade course offerings. and that seemed to be pretty well received. The idea that you could just go and talk to Mr. Waddy about what are the math offerings, or talk to Mr. Canizera about the English offerings, and that seemed to be a nice way to kind of change it up a little bit. In late March, we'll be administering the SBAC exams here on the 28th and 29th. And we'll be, as we did last year, we'll be releasing students in grades 9, 10, and 12. We'll be keeping our juniors here for those afternoons to do the testing. We'll provide a lunch for the juniors, and then we'll have them in smaller groups. You know, what we found last year is by doing smaller groups, there was a little bit more investment from students in the actual testing process. And we're hoping to improve our scores from last year and kind of continue that growth model. Finally, I do want to also, and yes, Keith, I have another finally after this one. I want to give some recognition to Robert Clark. He has been doing an incredible job this winter. As Woody pointed out, we have our newly renovated power plant that is now, came online in 2002 or 2003.
It says 4 on the building.
It says 4. So it's been in operation for quite some time, and it's starting to show its age. We've had some wrestling with some of the erosion or corrosion in the stacks. We've had some issues with some of the relief bladders. Robert has been here on the weekends over vacation, really doing a great job of almost literally with baling wire keeping the thing running. Right now, we're having some challenges with the gearing on the auger, which is another challenge. And he's been working closely with our friends from Minnesota who actually manufactured the parts. And they brought a part last week. Turns out it was the wrong part, but that's okay. We're going to get that fixed. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Robert's doing, and Jason and Peter as well, who's filling in for Russ Bartell. They're doing a great job of working really hard and keeping things going. So I want to make sure that if you see them, or if you see Robert, and I know Finance will see him on Thursday, just thank him for everything he's doing, please. Finally, and probably one of the least favorite parts of my job, we have 3 resignations. These are 2 of these are retirements, and 1 is a resignation. First, our part-time nurse, Daria Derling. She has had some health issues this year. She's also doing some family care. She has opted to resign her part-time position at BUHS. You'll recall she was hired when Nola Snyder left 2 years ago. We do have a person in place for the remainder of the year, and we'll probably open that position up as we get closer. So I would ask the board to accept Daria's resignation.
Is there a motion?
I move acceptance of Daria's resignation with regret.
Second.
Seconded, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Second, and this is Carolyn Durant, who's been a special educator here for many years. Carolyn has decided to retire at the end of this year. Carolyn's children came through BUHS. She's been here for 16 years, and before that, 2 years as a paraeducator. She has opted as well to retire at the conclusion of this school year. So I would ask the board to accept the resignation of Ms. Carolyn Durant.
I move acceptance of the resignation of Carolyn Durant with regret.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And finally, our math department, Kevin O'Donnell has informed us, Kevin has been here for many years, was up in Twin Valley for a few years and then came to BUHS. He's a wonderful classroom teacher, has done a great job revitalizing the AP Calculus curriculum. What you may not know is he's very great at teaching our TIPS class, our Techniques and Problem Solving class, to students as well. Kevin has let me know and let Ron know that he is also retiring at the end of this school year. So I would ask the board to please accept Mr. Kevin O'Donnell's resignation.
I move acceptance of Kevin O'Donnell's resignation with regret.
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
Okay. That's it.
All right. While we're on retirements, I just got some notification as well as Mike recently that Marty Litch, the special educator from the Career Center, is also her intentions to retire. So I would ask you to approve her retirement, Marty Litch.
I move we accept I
Go
got you
ahead,
this time.
go ahead.
Accept the retirement of Marty Litch with regret.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So you're done, so let's move to BAMS.
All right, hi everyone. I want to start by, just got a few things this evening. Just over the weekend, Peggy Maxfield, a math teacher, brought a group of 7th and 8th grade, are they all 8th graders? 8th grade students to the, well, I'll just read you the thing. Congratulations to the BAMS Math Count team who finished first in the Southeastern Vermont Regional Competition on Saturday. Team members include Miles Anton, Kim Amadin, Jillian Mahan, and Katrina Tao. Signe Kusinen also had a strong finish as well. Miles was also awarded first place overall. So congratulations. Good luck at the state competition to them. We had a really nice event last week at BAMS, first and hopefully annual potluck dinner that was organized mainly by the student leadership students and the adult helpers, Gabriella Raccio and Caitlin Campbell, and also Julianne Egan, who's helped as an administrative intern. The 3 adults and then all of the students on student leadership planned this potluck dinner, set up the MPR, and it was well attended, really well attended considering we had some weather come in that evening. And the staff, there was probably at least 25 teachers who showed up, and this is an evening event, so it wasn't required or anything. They just came to support the students and families and their colleagues. And it was just a really nice community event. I heard some really nice feedback about it. Good food, and the students put together really nice activities in the classrooms after the dinner, and it was just a really positive event for our school. And I wanted to thank all of them for their work on that. Let's see, today was our 8th grade got tested for the first time this school year, but it'd be one of 3 major tests that they take. NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. We are randomly selected. Seems like every 2 years, no matter what. And it was Julianne Egan. She worked her tail off as intern to put this all together. And it was really challenging this year. I bet you she put in 100 hours trying to organize this just for these 2 hours of testing. And NAEP, you know, they tried to use iPads this year, but they didn't have enough iPads for all the kids, and it was crazy organizing. And she pulled it off pretty seamlessly. And the kids were great. They were really, really great. But just to tell you a little bit about how this works. So I go into a classroom and I just was walking in and I wanted to visit, and these 2 women came right up to me from NAEP and they're like, oh, kind of, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm the principal, I'm just visiting. And one of them got a little nervous, like they got to follow all these protocols. And she's like, well, if he's in here for very long, he's going to have to fill out a form. Like verifying that I hadn't like looked at the tests or something. It was just like, so the amount of kind of like this paperwork and everything that Julianne took care of was outstanding, and again, our kids were great. So we're thankful that that's over, although they're coming back to take a few more kids for tests.
Just let me say that the nice thing about the NAEP is that, you know, Vermont we get selected every year, invited to do it. But the nice thing is Vermont always scores really high. Nationally, it's like in the top 3 to 4 states nationwide. So it's a nice indication of, you know, we have the other standardized test results that are internal to the state, but then when we have some comparison nationwide, it's nice to see that Vermont is doing really well.
And finally, I have a request, a fairly unique request from 2 teachers, Ann Kaplinka-Lair and Joe Powers. They're both social studies teachers. Ann teaches on Team Taurus and Joe teaches on Team Canis. And They would like to, I have formal written requests for them to both go to 50% next year, and it's probably a 2-year cycle, but we'll probably go 1 year at a time. Essentially, they'd both like to go to 50% and share a position. Joe would leave Team Canis and go to Team Taurus, and the two teachers would teach social studies for Team Taurus. Ann would teach in the fall, next fall semester. Joe would take over in the spring, and assuming that works out fine, the following fall Joe would continue, so he'd have a year straight with the students, and then Ann would take over the following spring. I certainly support this. They're both requesting these leaves for kind of personal situations, and it will work out much better than pulling in long-term subs. It will keep licensed BAMS teachers teaching the same curriculum, and what it does is open up a full-time position on Team Canis Major for me to hire. And so I support the move, so I'd like to make that request, that you approve that request. I can read the request specifically to you, but I just kind of gave you the outline. Would you like me to read any?
So when they go to 50%, do we still cover their health insurance, or how does that work?
Prorated.
It's prorated?
It's prorated.
So it's really, essentially, it's not gonna cost us anything.
No.
No, and depending on who I hire.
So we're still gonna have basically 2 teachers, because you got
Yeah.
250s.
Yeah.
One.
250s in one. Yep.
Yeah, we've had these types of job shares, probably more at the elementary level than middle school and high school, but they work out pretty well.
I really, and they both teach at the same grade level already, so, and they already kind of shadow curriculums run parallel, so I really see minimal disruption to how we operate.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve this as outlined by Keith.
Okay. Second, okay. Is there any other questions related to it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
That's all I have.
All right, let's move to the Career Center.
Good evening, everyone. So over the next month, we'll be having our sending schools view our programs. This year, we have 160 students coming to visit us in our programs from BAMS. And Putney and Dummerston will be sending us 35 8th graders. Leland and Gray will be sending us 66 students. Bellows Falls, 75 sophomores. Hinsdale is also going to be sending all their entire 40 sophomores to us. And Twin Valley are going to be sending us 30 sophomores. So about 400 students will be cruising through our programs and checking them out over the next month. So it's very exciting to show off our programs to these students. Hopefully I'll interest the students. And I want to thank Ann Dorn for organizing all these events. It takes a lot of organization, a lot of work on her part to schedule these with her stakeholders. So we hosted on January 9th and 10th a Southern Regional Education Board Career Pathways Workshop I spoke about in previous meetings. And we had over a 1.5 day period about 30 participants participate in this, and they range from teachers, counselors, board members. Ruth attended both day and a half, so thank you, Ruth. Business owners, our advisory board membership, and administrators as well from all of our sending schools. The mission or the premise of this career pathways workshop was to give an understanding and a foundation of the direction we're going in a career, as a career center with our schedule change, and the importance of helping students plan at an early age around middle school age level, the career pathway. And so, for example, it allows students to align secondary placements and the workplace through strategies such as work-based learning opportunities and dual enrollment opportunities we offer at the Career Center. So, really exciting work, and there'll be more to come on that work. The Career Center staff and advisory board members will be working on individual program career pathways. So, for example, construction will have an individual pathway for students that are interested in that field. And he'll be working with his advisory board members. And they're very excited to work with us to create an important tool for students to use. Last Wednesday, the forestry students attended the winter forestry competition in Essex, Vermont, with teacher Errol Nelson and para John Harrison. The objective of the event was to allow students to measure their tree identification skills, the pest identification, and maple sugaring knowledge for Vermont. We placed second overall in the state, and those students were Taylor Bell, Dave Chapman, Troy Felisko, Seth Jarrow, Jacob Lamorter, Logan Morton, Dylan Paquette, Rachel Pennell, Seth Rhodes, and Anthony Williams. So congratulations to all those students for doing a job well done. We also had Seth Rhodes place second overall in the state, and which is a great accomplishment for Seth. Last week, I had 3 staff members attend a Southern Regional Education Board Leadership Conference in Mobile, Alabama. And this is always a great leadership that focuses in and hones on the mission of career and technical education. And actually, Lyle Holiday joined them as well this year to get a better understanding of career and technical education. So I look forward to speaking with all of them and getting some feedback, and they're going to be sharing at future staff meetings what they've learned last week. This is also funded by our Vermont Perkins grant as well. This coming Saturday, our first robotics team, led by Amy Anthony, our engineering teacher, will be bringing a group of students to UVM for the first robotics competition. Those students will be Greg Crespo, Jude Melton-Helton, Lily Friesen, Catherine Friesen, Elliot Franz Holmes, and Trevor LeClaire. And just a quick description of what FIRST is. Its mission is to inspire young people to science and technology leaders by engaging them in exciting mentor-based programs that build science, engineering, and technology skills that inspire innovation and that foster well-rounded life capabilities, including self-confidence, communication, and leadership. So good luck to the students on this great opportunity they have for themselves to grow. And that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I probably should have brought this up under the report for the Regional Advisory Board, or the committee. However, I had the opportunity to, with Michael, to attend a joint meeting of Regional Advisory Board chairs and Tech Center directors in Randolph a couple of weeks ago. And this is the first time I've really been immersed in this topic for a full day, and it was very worthwhile. And quite a bit of time was spent in strategic planning for career centers, doing a SOAR analysis, which is now what we do instead of SWOT analyses. We do SOAR analyses, strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results, or that before. So it was really a great opportunity to get to meet some other career center directors and board members, and I appreciate being invited.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
Central office.
Yeah, I'm just passing around the latest dual credit listing. I'll wait until they come around. When we were reviewing the budget, I was thinking earlier today that it'd be good to just give you an update on the dual credit programming in the collegiate high school, where students are getting college credit in high school and the Career Center classes. And as you can see, when you look at the back, there's 56 courses. That's grown over the number of years that we've done this program. The pathways, liberal studies, social justice pathway, you can see all of the foreign languages and social studies classes. It's interesting to see the college partner on the right-hand column. And in most cases, these classes are offered here on site, either at the high school or the Career Center. The business pathway, most of those are Career Center classes. The STEM pathway has been very well attended. I think we started that a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, and it's worked out really well. We're actually, well, I guess I'll wait until we get a little further down. Early childhood and human service pathway, that's a great opportunity for our students. Visual and performing arts, and then the health and biomedical pathway. We're actually looking at expanding that to a nursing program. So students would get the first year of a nursing program here at school and then transfer to probably VTC or some other local school that offers the program. I think the key to this is within your budget. We developed the budget for this probably 10 years ago, and it started at maybe 30 to 40,000, grew to about 70,000. If you look at your budget from the full budget from year to year, it's just under 90,000 in terms of the support that we have for this, and most of this is for our coordinator, Tom Yan, who's done an excellent job to promote this and keep this going, and then primarily student scholarships and tuition money to allow us to keep these 3-credit courses at $100 for a 3-credit course. Typically, CCV is $650 for a 3-credit course, UVM is $1,800. So we have students graduating with 15 to 30 college credits, and most of them report, and we track this, that they are able to transfer those credits as they go into their post-high school placement, either as elective credit or if it's part of their major, they're able to do that. And I'm really proud that we keep having over 50%, I think it's either 53 to 57% of the students that are first generation or low income students that are benefiting from this program. So this is a real great program. I'm so pleased that Michael and Steve support this, and our teachers that are very enthusiastic about partnering with those college reps to offer the course curriculum based on the college requirements. So, just a little overview of that. Any questions on that? And then I gave you earlier this letter that I put together, and I had asked principals to get this out today to staff and parents. And I think it was really, primarily I've got messages from Rebecca Holcomb, the Secretary of Education, and Governor Scott, related to some of the things that are happening with the federal government. And I just wanted to make sure that our parents and staff understood the commitment that we have. I'm not going to read this letter, but you can see the district mission to provide a safe, inclusive, supportive environment where all students grow academically, socially, and emotionally, and are challenged to reach their potential as local and global community members. I quoted Rebecca Holcomb and Governor Scott. I wanted to make sure that people in our community, our parents, our students, understand that we are certainly a welcoming school district, that we emphasize that our schools are safe, welcoming places. We embrace diversity, race, religion, national origin, poverty, status, disability. All have the right to learn and to be supported in the school system. And I just cited a few cases of the diversity that we have. We celebrate diversity in this district. The fact that we have students in this community speaking 30 different languages is just remarkable. Our ELL, our English Language Learner Program, really supports these students at the middle school and high school. And at the elementary level, most of those students are at Academy School. And again, the staff very much supports them. Brattleboro Town, just as an example, when we do our climate surveys, students identify themselves students of color. There's between 20 and 22% of our students in this community that identify themselves as students of color. That's compared to an average of about 6% statewide. So we really have a very diverse community. I think we benefit from SIT, Marlborough College, some of the institutions in the area. I believe the diversity rate at the high school, middle school is about 15%. So, you know, we've supported diversity and equity for many years. Our equity team has been working to support these issues for over 30 years, and I'm really proud that our diversity equity coordinator, Michaela Sims, is a full-time position, that she really is an important resource to our students, families, and staff members. And then just to thank people for their support of what they do every day in the school system, either as teachers, administrators and staff, parents, students themselves, school board members, and community members that really contribute quite a bit to our school system.
I'd just like to thank you for it. You know, there are times that mission statement has been around for a while, but there have been various times over the years where it's more evident of what it means. Because when things are working well, one sort of assumes those things. But for different students and at different times, and providing safe, inclusive, supportive environment is critical.
Yep.
So thank you. And then at the end of that sentence, the potential is local and global community members. I mean, there are times where you look at it and go, you know, they're just words, but they're not just words.
Really?
And the district has been taking it seriously from the get-go. Language is being taught in elementary schools all the way up through here. So, thank you.
That's it for me until we get down to
the new business. Under administrative reports, the only thing that I want to remind everybody, a week from tomorrow is our annual meeting, 7 o'clock in the gym, in the high school gym. So hopefully everyone will be there, and we'll go through that process then. So we'll see each other next week. All right. Is there anything there's no unfinished business listed on our agenda, so I don't think there's anything there. And under new business, we have an Act 250 impact application.
Yeah, this is the requirement that any sort of new proposed residency just doesn't have a negative impact on the school district. And this program, the Lamplighter Inn for homeless people, will have no negative impact. So I would ask you to authorize me to let them know that it's there is no negative impact to the school system.
Does everybody understand that and know what that's about?
Yeah, there's an article in the newspaper.
Yeah, it's kind of actually an exciting thing, I think, for the community. You know, as somebody that deals with folks that are dealing with homelessness or insecurity around their homes a lot, it's kind of an exciting thing to have something new and different there. So that's going to be good. So is there a motion to?
I move that we authorize Superintendent Staley to sign the impact statement, Act 250 impact statement regarding the Lamplighter Inn Motel Great River Terrace project, stating that there will be no significant impact.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I actually have to abstain because my wife works with the housing trust.
Okay. So, and there's no nays. So, all right. Excellent. So we're taking care of there. Is there anything else under new business to come before us tonight?
Mr. Chairman, I have one brief statement.
Yeah.
I'd like to recognize Michael Auerbach.
I read an article in the Reformer on the 20th of January, and it demonstrated a project that Mr. Auerbach used to have his students source scientific articles. I feel that this is important and timely and extremely valuable and an excellent exercise in critical thinking. I would like to compliment him and hope that everyone would read the article, and if you see him, tell him good job.
Yeah, great. Excellent, thank you. That's a great example of the dual credit course, the collegiate high school course that he is affiliated with Marlborough College.
Excellent. Okay. Anything else under new business?
The only thing I'm also thinking about is for next Tuesday, we generally have the warning articles that you individually read. Have you already?
We did that at our last meeting, you were in Guilford. And those of you that weren't here at our last meeting, we made some decisions for you, because there was 9 warning articles and there's 9 of us, so we divvied them up. Bob's taking the hard one and doing the budget one for us, so he's got the hard one, but
It's actually not a hard one this year.
well, but it's the one that garners the most questions. So we just divvied them up evenly, and I'm assuming that Barb, as she always does, will have our cards ready for us to read, so it'll be pretty straightforward to do. But yeah, we did it the last meeting, and I think Frank took them back to Barb, so she has them. Who's doing what?
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
So the next meeting will be a month from tonight, the
Yes.
6th of
6th of
March.
March, yes. Because the next week's meeting typically counts as our second meeting in February. So we'll all be together for that. Unless, of course, something comes up in which the administration needs us to get together between next Tuesday and the 6th of March. But if that doesn't happen, then we're all set until then. All right.
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.